welcome to Trust the Journey. She's Melanie Curtis.
And he's Jason Moledzki.
We're here to create conscious connections, to grow and contribute through our practice of openness, honesty, vulnerability, humility, and trust. Trusting the entire journey.
Amen. Our mission is to live, laugh, love, and learn together with all of you listening. Across the internet family, our handle is trustthejourney.today. If you want a cost-free way of supporting the podcast, we so appreciate everything that you do. You can subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify or Instagram. You can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you think we deserve it. All of that stuff really helps us. Sharing an episode of the show that you think will help someone, that makes a real difference on how many people we can reach.
Yeah, and if you'd like to reach Melanie and myself more directly, you could become a member of our Patreon group, which is called the Trust the Journey Family. Now, that's a Facebook group that we curate together where we create a vulnerable space where everybody can share and connect and exchange and be real and not have to worry about feeling threatened by that world of social media out there. We are building community together, and we would love to have you as part of it. It's such a great group. You can get there by clicking the Patreon button at trustthejourney.today on our website, and that'll take you right to where you need to go. And if you donate at the $25 level, you can take part in our coaching integration circles, which happen once a month. And these are going so well. I'm so stoked about the progress in that area. So yeah, we'd love to have you. Go to trustthejourney.today, click on the Patreon button, and go ahead and make a donation and join us.
Yeah, for sure. Those integration circles, I was literally just thinking about this, Jay, about how that really is a way to get to know us a lot more intimately. Like, if you are called to know both of us more, join us in those circles. Obviously, it's not all about us. It's about the community, and we are absolutely there to support you on your journey. But it is a way for everyone who joins those circles to get to know each other, ourselves included. So we really do welcome you to Jay's point, trustthejourney.today. All the info is there. And if you want to reach out to Jay or me directly, you can find us at our individual websites, jasonmoledzki.com or melaniecurtis.com.
And always, if you hear us talking about plant medicines, psychedelic healing, any of these kind of concepts, we're talking about these for informational purposes only. We are not doctors. We do not promote anything illegal. We're just looking to have our own spiritual journeys and encourage you to form your own opinions.
Amen. Yeah, so today we haven't been together in a while. We've done a lot of interviews. We are doing a reconnection episode. Jay and I are going to share what's been going on in our worlds, and as always, extract all the insight that we can from those shares as well. Oh my God.
I miss you.
I miss you too. I'm so happy to see you. So much has happened since we last spoke. It's, oh my God, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, is there anything that calls to you to start with, my friend?
Well, that's definitely, I'm just going to take a minute to reference that there's been some change in our programming. And obviously, if you've been following the show, you've seen that we've been having a lot more guests on the show, and we've been doing fewer of our banter back and forth episodes, but we're going to keep doing these because they're so much fun and they're so so much value to be found in them. But we made some goals for the channel early at the beginning of the year. We set a bunch of goals. We're like, we want to have at least this many guests on. We want to do this much. And so we've been pursuing those goals, and we've been making space inside of our own lives to do things, to live our lives and allow for the space that's needed for the changes that are happening and the just life going on. And that means we've been taking more initiative individually as well as a team to start bringing more guests. And I hope you like it. I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments about what you guys think about the new style and how things are going. And super stoked to be back here in our traditional format chatting with you again.
Yeah, totally. I'm so glad that you said that because, team, I mean, again, what are we doing here? We're trying and really aiming to model growth and model and simply be in that growth experience. One thing I did an Instagram live, well, not a live, but like a reel the other day. I shared a video on Instagram where I was talking about how, actually, no, I did do a live. God, see, I don't even remember my life, team. Like, this is going to be kind of probably a funny episode because I'm going to be like, wait, what happened? I did a live in the Trust the Journey family sharing, and I shared about how Jay and I have a team culture that allows us to wax and wane as needed for our personal lives, because our personal needs and lives are number one. That's like literally like we position them a number one because we know that is one of the critical foundational pieces of having a functional creative team or business or any of that. So I did a bunch of interviews while Jay was sort of focusing on his stuff. And then I was like, I'm out for like a month minimum because I had a lot going on. I had a huge talk that I was preparing for that I just delivered last week. I'm still totally coming down from that and processing that experience. I'll share more about it. I also moved. My mom came for a huge visit. There's probably more I'm forgetting, but it was just a huge time for me, especially big prep for this talk, which was a lot of work, but I'm very grateful. I did it, and I'll share more. Yeah, like I said.
Yeah. And in the meantime, I went to Burning Man and I hosted a big flocking event here in Moab, and we hosted a mini festival, a 2-day mini festival, and another party for the Moab Boogie. And so it's just been one thing after another nonstop. And it's been great to have this culture. Like, one of the things that I really, really enjoy about the teams that I work with, Trust the Journey being one of my favorites, is the absolute respect and honoring of each other's missions, individual missions, and how we know that, you know what, the tide comes in and out. The rivers swell and they surge, and then they dwindle down to nothing. And that's natural. That's normal. One of the things I've really found challenging in kind of the status quo is that, like, 9 to 5, be here every day, this time. Like, life's not like that.
Totally.
At least my life has never been like that. I've never been able to fit in that box of rigid structure. And I love structure. Structure sets us free, but there has to be this ability to ebb and flow as our lives and our journeys call us to do those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, do you want to dive into some sharing and some details?
Holy smokes. You said it earlier. I was like, I don't even remember my life.
No,
Like,
I
was like,
say that all the time. I totally say that all the time, where I'm like, I legit don't even remember what I did yesterday, much less a couple weeks ago. You know what I mean? But I mean, I'm happy to start sharing, because it's the talk that I did was sort of a part of a bigger mastermind experience I was a part of this year with amazing women that I shared the stage with, the other speakers that were a part of this event. It was basically a TED style talk. It was not an official TEDx talk, but it was very TED style, where you think about, what is it that you want to say? You know, what ideas do you want to impart with the world, and you, by the way, have to connect deeply and meaningfully in a matter of 8 to 12 minutes. Go. It's like really difficult. I feel lucky. This is going to sound weird, but a few people dropped out of the event, and that allowed us to have more time for our talk, because I was like, how in the fuck am I going to be able to say what I want to really say and have the audience experience it with delicious pauses and real presence on the stage with 8 minutes? It felt like impossible. And so we were really working through some challenging prep around that type of stuff. But ultimately, I got to a place where I felt good about what I was sharing and how it was. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to describe, but like, I got to a place where I felt good about it, and also knowing that it was absolutely a starting point only. Like my talk could easily be a 20-minute TED talk, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared, go ahead.
No, I was at the Hall of Fame celebration recently, and all the recipients were given the opportunity to come up and receive their awards, and they had 4 minutes flat.
Unacceptable. Absolutely
to deliver their
unacceptable.
Yeah. It was so challenging. Yeah.
I heard about that, and talk about connecting to your feelings. I'll give another example of anger that I connected to. But I heard that and I was like, that is absolutely fucking ridiculous that they did not allow people receiving their Hall of Fame, their literally
award of a lifetime,
award of their entire lifetime, and they cut them off, and they like, what? Absolutely unacceptable. The whole reason people are there is to hear them. Whoever made that decision needs to debrief themselves and sort out things for next time. And I'm happy. I don't even know who that is, and I'm happy for them to hear my tone on this public forum.
Yeah, it was a very during the whole thing, it was very touchy. It was very obvious how challenging it was for absolutely everybody who was trying to deliver their own received gratitude and deliver it back and have that deep and meaningful connection with the 1,000 people that are there. You know, there was only one person there who was able to just like shop through it all and get to like, okay, thank you, bye. You know?
Yeah.
And it was challenging.
Anyway.
So I hear your delivery. So this is I want to pivot this a little bit to, I mean, we're talking about your recent talk, and this Hall of Fame celebration is one of the things that I was at. And this morning, and you do this every single day, so you know all about it. I picked up my phone and I recorded a video, and what I wanted to do was get across a deep point, like something really valuable that I want to share, but I know the chances are I have most people's attention for like 15 seconds.
Right.
So my point here is just a little encouragement towards anybody who would actually take the time to listen to this to let's step back. Let's step and slow down and back off of this like ADHD kind of life of living of like, I don't have the time for more than a few seconds of engagement. You know what? I have the time. I want quality. I don't want quantity. I want quality.
Same.
So,
same. Well, to give people some insight, my talk, the core idea of my talk was this notion that deep healing is the missing piece. So we talk about that a ton on Trust the Journey. Anybody who has listened to the show at all would not be even remotely surprised at my talk. You've heard it many times organically shared here. But I put it together sharing and, of course, using skydiving as the powerful metaphor that it is, but also sharing from the perspective of I used to think that peak performance, big goals, all the skydiving achievements, as we've discussed many times, plus connection and relationships I thought that was what mattered, right? Like that was like fulfillment in life, as it were. But the big piece that I was missing was deep healing. Like that I didn't even know deep emotional healing was a thing, much less that I needed it. You know what I mean? And sharing this sentiment that when it comes to healing, what holds us back the most is we don't think we need it, right? Like, and really sharing then pragmatically about what are blind spots. Oh, blind spots are a thing. We all have them. It's normal, right? And then just going on, and I told a really beautiful story about psychedelic healing. So I specifically zeroed in on psychedelic healing as the avenue of healing primarily focused on inside my talk. Why? Because, of course, it's done so much for me personally. I would not be where I am without it. And I care to be a public advocate for these medicines, as we've said again many times. And so I wanted to use the opportunity to be on a stage where people are not normally hearing about psychedelic healing, but then they're hearing about it connected to, oh, she's a world record holder. She's a successful businesswoman, life coach, speaker, author, podcaster, yada, 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 right? And so connecting that credibility to the conversation they may not have ever been invited into. And so I feel great about that. The funny thing is there was this beautiful, poignant moment. My mom was there, and I shared about how the medicine is basically essentially helped me be actually present with my mom. How before I had this fear, I'm not going to deliver my talk right now on the podcast, but I'll find a way to share it and deliver it for people if they want to hear it. But there was this really beautiful, poignant moment where I'm sharing about, and I'm like delivering it, and there's supposed to be this beautiful, powerful, pregnant, giant space of silence for this knowing to land that like there is no greater gift that I have experienced than this healing that I have gotten to be actually with my mom while she's here, right? So I deliver this line and someone's fucking cell phone went off. I wanted to literally murder them. I'm like not a violent person, but I was like, I did not like on stage, but I'm not joking. After the fact, I've been like processing all these feelings because I wanted the audience to have that moment to be able to rest in the gravity of that. Plus, it was the moment that I like pointed to my mom in the audience, you know what I mean? And like wanted to give her a moment of saying hi and say hi to her. It was fine, but it was totally one of those moments where you're like, this is the universe going, you have to let this go. Things are not perfect. You have to detach from the outcome of this perfect moment that you had planned months and months for, right? It's just classic. I
am
right?
so deeply relating to you right now because of so many similar. I can remember performing a set that I had spent 6 months just working my ass off and to make this absolutely perfect. And it was at like 98% of the way through. It's like I'm just about to transition, and the stage had been bouncing so much that my computer had been bouncing that the cable was falling out of the side of the computer. And it was like right at like the big heartfelt, right at the part where it's like, whoa, like melting your souls. And it goes like glitch, glitch. And I had to like quickly replug it back in, but the entire audience like,
yes,
like everybody glitched along with it, you know? And
Totally. And of course, I am certain that person whose phone went off felt horrified.
Oh my God.
Horrified. I'm sure of it because everyone in the audience, of course, was there to support us and love us. So it just makes me laugh. But also my talk is about how feelings are not failure. They're also not to be, avoided. They're also guides to what am I missing? How is this helping me look into a blind spot of my own to further enlighten myself or learn about myself or grow and evolve? And so it's actually really quite useful because I don't connect to anger that much. It's not an emotion that I have a lot of experience with. I do have some, but it's not really where I tend to go. I either tend to cry or I tend to like reconcile, but I tend to skip anger. And so like I was just letting myself feel into that anger after the events passed and everything. My mom and I had a wonderful visit. We had the most amazing dinner after the event with like 8 of my loved ones, and it was the most wonderful thing ever. Like it is a core memory. I will remember it for the rest of my life. It was that fucking wonderful. So it's totally not a big deal. Like it's fine. I'm gonna deliver this talk again. It's gonna be whatever. But where I'm going with this is that I was letting myself afterwards feel that anger and be like, fucking raw, right? Just because, but like also recognize that's my attachment to that outcome. And I have,
I'm so
That's
proud of
it.
you that you're just recognizing the emotion, right? And this is the big, 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 big life lesson is to just feel the emotion and go, oh, wow, what an emotion. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
totally.
What a feeling is happening right now, and not necessarily feel like we just need to be that feeling is, it's just bubbles up and it goes away, and unless we grab it and like latch on and make it our, and like dive into it. I want to reference a very similar thing happened to me this week, which has been happening more and more, and it's the exact same thing. It's this recognition of the self, right?
Yeah.
Like whoa, I'm feeling a big whatever, and I heard myself have a thought, and it was just kind of random and not really healthy or like a good thought. It was just this, like, I was like, and so I just said out loud, I'm like, hey, I heard that. I heard that. Don't you be thinking those kind of thoughts, like, and I'm
Nice.
like, I'm going to grab that part of myself that is having this weird little thought in here and be like, hey, you're not in there by yourself thinking you're sneaking and getting away with these thoughts of like, you should be angry, you should be jealous,
Yeah.
you should feel this way towards some whatever. And then I'm like, no, you should shut up. Go back to your room,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And again, that's sort of that was the big thing that I was sharing, this idea that feelings are not failure. I've said that so many times, but I believe it so deeply that it's the avenue for us when we are willing and brave enough to feel through our painful, challenging, difficult emotions. That is the avenue to also the most transformative, life-altering joy. And I am on board. I am committed to that as part of my life. And so it's all been wonderful, So just to give people some little bit of context, I shared the story about how in a early mushroom ceremony, I was brought back to my grandmother's passing, and how I saw my mom holding her mom's hand in that moment, right? And how I cried that grief and let that grief come out of my body. Then how the medicine showed me my own deepest fear, which was the fear of losing my mom, and how I just wept and wept and wept for hours. It just like rivers of sadness pouring out of my body, releasing that pain and fear. And how that was what allowed me to have this greatest gift, which is this ability to be present with my mom. So anyway, we have another couple of days hanging out and just living life. I'm in my new place. It's just like wonderful. And this happens every time I leave my mom and my family. If I go and have a really because when I'm with my family, I don't fuck around. You already know this about me. I am present as all get out. I am with them. I cherish every moment. And so when I leave them, it's like this geyser of emotion. Every time I leave them, I end up bawling my eyes out. It's just like tons of emotion just bubbles up and out. And it didn't come immediately in this experience. I dropped my mom off at the airport, and then I went and I helped my friend Irina move some of her stuff. And on the way back, I was listening to a song, "The Days I Will Remember." I put it on one of my Instagram reels. It's so beautiful. And I popped and I bawled my eyes out driving the rest of the way home. And it's just, I know that's normal. I'm not freaking out about that. I'm like, yeah, there are those feelings. Let's let them out. As long as I need to cry, I'm going to cry. And now I'm good, and I'm still processing and all that stuff. But my point is the feelings they're fine. They're no big deal. It's okay.
I listened to a couple other podcasts recently. I was listening to one, The Lunatic Fringe, with Dean Ricci, and it was a discussion with Omar Legalan and Junior Ludwig, and they were talking about death and processing emotions and how we deal with it and allowing these feelings and everything. And then the other one was Laurent Frat on Exit Point talking to Matt Lage, because Turkey Boogie's happening here in Moab. And he was talking about his own traumas and death. And I lost a really good friend this year, somebody that I care for very deeply. I was really close with, and I haven't cried. I haven't had any emotional outpouring other than kind of like, it's just like a settled feeling of like, oh man, I'm really going to miss him.
Yeah.
You know? And I've been wondering and kind of waiting to see if there's going to be a trigger or something where that's going to pop, as you say, and that's going to come. And I was listening to some of the conversations that they were having on those podcasts around how, somebody like you or I, who's been in the sport for a long time, has lost a lot of people, how we become almost desensitized or practiced with how we manage grief or loss and all these feelings. And I wonder, I have wondered, I'm like, am I suppressing an emotion here that I'm like not allowing it? Or am I just at peace with this knowledge that I have within myself that all things continue to always exist,
right?
And that person never truly leaves, and so all these questions internally. But I know from my own past experience that there's always some connective piece. There's always something challenging and something hard inside of us. Like there's always a connection. And Matt actually said something, and it kind of triggered me a little bit. He was talking about having lost one of his partners, and how do I want to say this? They were discussing how we manage our feelings, and basically what it came to was like, time heals all wounds. And I was like, fuck no, it doesn't.
No, I disagree.
Fuck no, it doesn't. I was completely opposed. And I was I got this thing and I'm like, no, I've had pains in my life that have not changed at all.
Yep.
Because I haven't ever addressed them.
Correct.
I haven't actually processed them. And it's only once I start allowing those feelings and actually going looking for them and bringing them up that they actually can be healed. So that one phrase of like, time heals all wounds, I was like, I don't agree with that at all. And I want to make a point to mention it because it's an adage that we kind of live within. We can inside of our culture, there's this thing of like, oh, we'll just suppress those emotions with numbing agents, or we'll just move on and, push even harder at the things that we do. We'll just be busy. The best thing you can do is keep your hands busy, and yeah, there's something to be said with, continuing to not just sit and wallow, but I definitely don't agree with that concept of time heals all wounds, because no, it's just straight not true.
I completely agree. Yeah. I mean, time can layer on dysfunction also if we do not address the wound that is unhealed. Yeah, for sure. And this is sort of the important reason to talk about the nuances of quote unquote healing, right? To really be in conversation around, when we talk about healing, what do we mean, right? I did an interview with James LeBerry on his podcast, 20-Minute Call podcast, and we got into psychedelic healing. We got into deep healing. And he was like, humor the question, what do you mean by a, quote, healing journey? And so we talked about that at length. And I think it's important to really open that discussion. I mean, the metaphors are so wildly rich, right? We look at skydiving and some people are like, oh, you're just falling out of an airplane, right? For people that are deeply immersed in it, they know there's wild nuances to this sport, this community, this, spiritual act. There's so much to it about how does my foot feel when I'm flying this orientation versus when I walk onto a drop zone, this is what happens in my chest and my heart, my body activates in this way, et cetera, et cetera. Those are two minor details, and there are so many of those. The same is true for, quote, healing. And so to make it, to oversimplify it to time heals all wounds, I think is a vast disservice to the conversation around healing. I will give them credit for talking about healing. I think that's great. Again, I haven't heard the episode, so I don't want to sound like I'm being super judgmental or, not supportive of their conversation, because I'm sure it's a really good one. But yeah.
No, it's a great conversation,
Yeah.
and it's really beautiful stuff that, that they're talking about. I was just really wanted to reflect on that, that concept, because it really, from my own experience, it's not been the case.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been doing some healing lately, which has been a really interesting journey. I came across the system of IFS, internal family systems, through exposure to, initially it was Tim Ferriss, and then Aubrey Marcus, and then Return on the Aubrey Marcus podcast. And then I found a bunch of other videos connected. And so I watched like half a dozen different long form podcasts, and then went and did some website research. And I went and found myself an IFS practitioner.
Amazing.
I've been doing this kind of work. This is internal family systems, where it talks about parts work, different parts of ourself. And so it's just to be clarify, the family is not our actual blood family. The family is all the parts of our internal being. It's all the different parts inside of us. And so that ranges from every different type of character who has come up at the different times in our lives to play the different roles and serve the greater being of who we are. And it's about making space and acknowledging each of these roles and what their needs are and how they've played the different parts in our lives, which ones are, fighting a battle that's long over and still fighting, and which ones have been, scared into a corner and have never been acknowledged and are still there terrified. And I'm really impressed with the overall concept as far as modality of therapy, because it really acknowledges this elemental, like multifaceted kind of piece of ourselves, right? Like we're all all very multifaceted. We all have different sides of us in different places and times, and super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I haven't done a ton of parts work by any means. Definitely heard the same episodes on Tim Ferriss and Aubrey's shows that have had me recommend it many times to different clients and whatnot, because I'm a big believer. The way that I've used parts work most powerfully, and I am certainly open to more work with this type of modality, but when I recognize a part of myself that is activated in a way that I don't necessarily like, or I might feel confused about or shame around, or just something that makes me feel discomfort in some way, I think how that part needs love and needs its voice to be heard. And so I don't squash the part. I listen to it. I love it. I don't necessarily let it lead and make my decisions for me, but I listen to it and I let it have its voice heard. That is the number one thing, is like, how can I love this part? Is that I listen to it and I allow it to be. And then I make a decision from maybe a different part around how I'm going to proceed, one that is maybe more in line with the conscious person that I want to be living into.
100%. That whole concept that there are no bad parts, right? Like every single part of us is there doing a positive thing, helping us in some way. That's really the fundamental underlier to the whole thing. It's like, whatever version of ourself it is, it's there to serve the whole being.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, super interesting. So I shared something inside of our private group the other day, and I'll just touch on it for a second because it's a great example, and I'm sure the bigger audience will want to hear this. Is I've had this memory floating around in my mind, and I've rethought of or remembered this experience a countless number of times on a subconscious level. Like I've never I've never spoken about it to anybody. I've never said it out loud, but at some subconscious level, I could remember the day when my mom and dad split up, when they had a fight and my dad left and he marched out the door, and that was the end of their marriage. And I was around 3 years old when that happened. So this is a really interesting thing for me. I look at, I'm curious. This is my curiosity spiking, going, wow. As that came up during the therapy, I'm like, first of all, I'm 3 years old. If I can pull up a memory from 3 years old, that means I can remember everything that's ever happened, right?
Yeah.
It's just buried somewhere subconsciously. And the fact that I still have it looping at subconscious level means it's affecting me somehow, that there's some level of like, that is triggering an emotional response within me. And so it felt so good, even though it was very challenging to vocalize it. It felt so good to just say, to share with my therapist where I was and what I heard and what I was feeling, what that part of myself was feeling at that time.
Yep.
And that's the example. It's like, oh yeah, that 3-year-old version of me was feeling these emotions during that experience, and those need to be acknowledged, and that part needs to be cared for. And yeah, I'm a 50-year-old man, and that was 47 years ago, and whatever, it shouldn't be affecting me now.
Right.
Bullshit, still does.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. What a gift to remember something like that and be able to feed love there, to give love to that sweet, sweet boy, that sweet, sweet 3-year-old boy, like just love him. Yeah.
Right?
It's
I was looking through pictures and I'm like,
wonderful.
look at the little 3-year-old.
Yeah, it's true. I think one of my I've said this before, I don't know if I've shared it on the podcast, but I've shared it with friends before. I feel like one of my, if not the earliest memory I have, is leaving my dad's house with my mom and my brother when we were leaving for good. Like I don't remember understanding the situation, but there was some emotional knowing where like my dad kissed me through the window and I was in the car. There was some knowing in my young body that knew that was some tough moment. Yeah, like there was emotion. I haven't fully explored the memory, but I definitely have it available. It's consciously where I'm aware of it consciously.
No, that's so I want to reflect back on one of my favorite quotes from you, and I'm going to keep repeating this one, is I'm not afraid of my feelings, Melanie Curtis.
That was my talk.
And the reason
my whole talk was basically that.
Fuck yeah. And the reason why I will continue to bring this up is because we're all afraid of our feelings in some way or another, right?
Totally.
Like we are all terrified to re-feel the feeling of the first time we lost somebody and they died, or when we were in a traumatic experience where we were really scared.
Yep.
Or the first time we lost love and our hearts were broken. Who wants to re-feel that again? I'm like, that's a super scary feeling to re-feel again. But this is where I'm going to like bring it all back around. They're going to keep coming up unless we re-feel them, right? They're just going to keep coming back to us. So this thing of time heals all wounds ain't true. That wound is still there. And unless we go back and re-feel it and give it a chance to be experienced and find the values and the lessons in it, we're just going to keep repeating these patterns within us. So I want to share a little more. This summer, I had a period of depression when I was looking back through my post recently and seeing kind of what I'd been sharing on the internet and what did that look like, and tracking the stressors in my life, the financial sides, work sides, personal sides, just kind of looking through and trying to identify patterns, right? And see where was the triggers, what were the things that kind of caused me to have this onset of this period of depression. And I was able to easily pick some out. I was having financial stresses. It was really, really hot. It was the heat of summer, and I don't usually thrive in heat. I tend to hide from it. And I ran into some serious issues with my van breaking down and really just my whole summer plans falling apart. I had this big connective journey plan to go visit friends and family and do all these activities and personal stuff and work. And it just fell all apart. And so the key thing that came out of this was as I was going back and looking through, I could see where things started to kind of go downhill. And then I found a graph that mirrored it. And this was such a huge insight for myself. I use Strava, the activity tracking sports app. And every single time I do anything athletic, I push record and then I push stop when I'm done, and it logs everything. And I also use it as a photo journal, and I love the inspiration that comes from it, from looking at my, super achiever athletic friends. I love rooting for my other friends on there as well. So I really enjoy the app. But it popped up a notification and it said, hey, I want to see your last year's progress. Yeah, I do. And I clicked on it and I can see, big ups to me, my activity level is up 100% this year over last year.
Nice.
So I've been super duper active physically. And I've also had one of the best years of my life, right? Like absolutely really thriving in who I am and working on the things that I want to be working on, and having less of those recurring patterns occur that are pulling me back or away from, and challenging feelings, not knowing how to process them, having less of those things happen. And I could see this, okay, I'm doing great. And then there's this great big whoosh, this huge downhill slope on the graph of activity. And that activity slope went from, very high to very low. And along with my activity went my mental health. And I went into that slump of depression and of addiction and of just swallowing inside and not knowing how to process and not having skills or like mental fortitude to really be able to handle the stressors of the situations that I was in. And I had a lot of responsibilities, a lot of other stuff going on. And so this really, really, really helped me because I was able to see it on a piece of paper, essentially. I'm like, okay, I'm doing great. And then here's where I'm not doing great. And what am I going to use that? How am I going to use that? Like, what's the tool, right? Yes, I need to stay physically active all the time because exercise is directly correlated to mental health. And weightlifting, strength training is related to like physical strength, right? Exercise is not to lose weight. Exercise is to maintain mental health. You want to lose weight, change a diet, right? You want to stay mentally strong and healthy, exercise all the time. You want to get strong and physically fit, then lift weights.
Yes.
And I've been doing all of those things, and it was really cool to see how that two parts of it, see it there and recognize that all wounds are not healed, right? Like there's still this thing in there that hasn't been addressed yet. And I still haven't developed a skill set to manage that onset of depression. So now, I'm on a rant.
That's okay. I love it. This is good.
Yeah, now I just set my notifications to like track my weekly activity. And if my activity's going down, I just need to go move.
Yeah.
And as soon as I get stressed, I find myself like feeling stress. I go, oh, I have a skill set to deal with this. And then what I do is just drop everything and walk away and go move, go exercise, because that turns my ability to manage those stressful times back to a level where I can actually stay zen, make a decision and make an action.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for discovering that. Because again, you could have not gone after that data. You could have not taken the time to look through things and with a thoughtful, intentional lens on your mind. That's also something to acknowledge, where you're like, I've had this experience that I would like to not repeat if I can. I'm not judging it. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong or anything like that. But if possible, what occurred here, so I can understand, so that if I do have skills, I can employ them, and if I don't, I can lean into trying to learn some new ones. So I love that. I think that's a really beautiful example of how quote unquote do we do it? How do we do mental and emotional health, right? It's one thing to talk about it big picture conceptually, and it's another to actually go, this is what pragmatically occurs when we're struggling, and this is what pragmatically occurs when we're maintaining and rising. So I want to share a parallel story that is connected to what I've just recently been through and am building, connected to what you just shared. So I don't think I shared this on the podcast. I think I touched on that I had gotten some news that I wasn't ready to share about. I feel like that's what I shared the last time we talked. So a lot has happened. Anyway, long story short, a couple months ago or 3 months ago now or so, my roommate...
It was July the last time that we talked.
Oh my God. That's insane. What? Yeah,
we haven't talked since July.
Holy not on recording anyway. But that is crazy. Anyway, so Sarah, my longtime roommate and one of my closest, most cherished friends, we have lived together almost 7 years. And she basically, I knew she was looking for a job and potentially going to move forward in her career. She's an incredible arts educator and an artist herself. She's an amazing human to be around. Not a skydiver. I tend to do that where I need non-skydivers around me as well. Anyway, she comes home one day and she's like, I got my dream job and we're gonna, I'm gonna be moving back to New York, which basically prompted, this is a wonderful news. She deserves this position. She is built for this position. It's essentially bringing arts and arts education and art experiences to marginalized communities and the underprivileged, unhoused in New York City. It's a really, really amazing program, and she's running a huge, huge part of it. Anyway, so the day of this news, we had a Trust the Journey Integration Circle, and I
remember.
Yeah, I was unbelievably emotionally affected by this news. Both very happy for Sarah, but it instantly, because when Sarah and I moved in together, I was still heartbroken. I was still feeling like a complete and utter loser in my life. I had no idea what was good. I was just felt unlovable. Just all the bad things that you feel when you're heartbroken and you're trying to heal at the beginning stages of that version of healing and grief. It rocketed me sort of back to that fear of holy fucking shit, am I going to be a total loser again? Just really totally unfounded things. But to your point, Jay, of some of that stuff was still in there. I hadn't felt all of that. I'm a loser. I'm not lovable, or I'll be alone forever. All this stuff that you feel when you're in a breakup, in a heartbreak scenario. So anyway, that stuff really bubbled up, and I couldn't stop crying. I was really crying that day. And I was the Integration Circle is the perfect place for me to show up as my real and vulnerable self. I didn't share what actually happened in the circle because I wasn't ready to share details, but I let everyone know I feel really emotional today, and I'm probably going to cry maybe more than one time, and I'll fill you in when I'm ready. And I did. I cried a few times, but it was it's okay. So anyway, that happened. And I'll let you chime in if you want to before I tell the rest of the story.
I mean, that particular call was a perfect example of the value of the Trust the Journey family and the integration calls and the practice of just allowing our feelings to occur. And it's so crazy. I mean, that circle that you just connected, if they're okay, first of all, 7-year cycle.
Yeah.
Note, right? And second of all, that feeling of inadequacy that you had when you found that situation and put yourself in that situation and created a reality for yourself that took you out of it, that when that reality came apart and was no longer going to be there anymore, you immediately returned back to this sense of inadequacy.
Correct.
Right. And that's the perfect example to say, oh, wait, where's the root of the feeling of inadequacy? Because
Correct.
obviously you're not inadequate. And
Correct.
you know, you do have the skills to manage creating situations that affirm that for yourself. But somewhere underneath, there's a wound, which is based in some other early life experience, which makes you feel inadequate. And who knows what that is or where that'll come from. But there's something for your next plant medicine ceremony, Melanie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and and listen, it doesn't always have to come from the deep, deep roots of the parent and the ancestral stuff. It often does, obviously, but it also can be, more recent stuff that you hadn't fully felt through. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of it for me was that. I'm sure there's more deeper stuff there because I always believe that there is. I mean, like we say, the metaphorical and metaphysical onion has infinite layers to peel. So it's like we're always peeling them. But why I point to that is that even in the feeling, even in the pain of that thought, I knew that it was not true. So there's a difference between cognitively knowing it's not true and feeling the emotions that are still there to feel. So and again, it was only one day. After that day, I felt excited about a potential future, still afraid and stressed, before I had solved and sorted out the next thing that I was going to do. So there was tension and anxiety for sure in that uncertainty period, but that's not, that wasn't connected to inadequacy. It was more connected to, I want to make sure I'm safe, just fundamental stuff of like, make sure I have a roof over my head and I'm maintaining my life and et cetera. But anyway, it was just an important part of the process of this change. Very long story, super short. My partner and I decided to move in together, which is wonderful. And so I am here now. The call is occurring from my new home. So this is all wonderful. It's all good news. A whole process, of course, we went through to get to the decision to do it. And the universe simply is helpful in prompting that discussion to open up, and life delivers us with left turns all the time. And so it was a beautiful experience for us to really navigate that and figure out what we're doing. But now that's a big part of the change that was happening in my life behind the scenes while I'm preparing for this giant talk, right? I moved in days before I delivered the talk on stage. I'm preparing, circling all the way back to your share about exercise and the importance of it and the importance of routine and structure, is that my whole structure, I canceled my gym membership, I canceled my co-working space, like everything was coming down, right? I have always wanted to be a part of my friend Pam's biohacking gym portal in New York City. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna see what's up there. And so I basically committed to going to Portal every Monday morning. I get on like the 6:15 train from where I live into the city. I walk 25 blocks south to the Portal gym. I do a cold plunge, which was my first one ever. And I committed to 7 full weeks of this program. It's not even a program, it's just my developed program to give myself structure, accountability, health, and like high-end, no fucking around recovery that I get at minimum once a week, which is, I need more, but like that was a huge pillar of what felt like security, because core human needs, we need novelty and change. So change is good. This is great. I'm loving my new space. I'm going to get to create and be artistic in my new space. And that's all wonderful. But I also need safety and security, right? As a human. And so I knew that my life didn't have hardly any of that other than relational safety, right? My relationship with my partner, relationship with my family, with you, etc. All those things were good, but functionally, I had very little safety and security. So I put that in by saying, I'm going to Portal every single Monday morning and I'm doing this thing, cold plunge, workout, recovery, and I'm going to see some people and that's going to be it. And that's basically what I did.
Yeah. Good for you.
Thank you.
That's great to hear. Yeah. It's tough when everything uproots, and I want to acknowledge a similar journey within myself is spending a couple of years van lifing around. Yeah, there's a lot of structure. You follow patterns, but I really struggled with the variability to structure ratio was way too much variability compared to what I found how I thrive is with a little more structure than variability as far as the ratio. So
yeah,
one of the decisions to get a place and to be a little more grounded is to allow myself more time to rest, more clear times to work without distraction, and then where my exercise and where my connection and all these pieces are going to come in are going to have a lot more clarity. So
yeah, totally.
Nicely done, Mel.
Thank you. Nicely done, both of us. I'm proud of both of us. It's big. I joked to my mastermind peeps. I was like, I'm actually stoked that I just have work calls this afternoon. Just another piece of groundedness, something that's known that I can, start to feel. I can sit here, talk to you and be like, yeah, this feels good. And known, and obviously are always our therapy sesh. But
I want to mention one other thing because as we started this call, I just scratched down probably 10 different things on this piece of paper about possible things we could talk about from my own last few months, and there's one there that really has had a huge influence on kind of the direction. Excuse me. One of these mustache hairs wants to go up into my nose. So why is there always one that just wants to go the other way around? There's one earlier this year, I started a coaching program. I decided to invest in myself and participate in something called a Reality Mastery. And it's a coaching group of entrepreneurs and business people who are looking to take themselves from whatever level they're at to wherever their goals are. And it's a great group, a great program. And I was receiving a ton of value out of it. And I've been pushing through it all and learning and working. And I hit a wall, a solid wall. And it was all because of a question. There was a question that came up in the program that, with me being truthful to myself, I couldn't answer with clarity.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is I could put an answer there, but it didn't feel like I was really being deeply pure and authentic to my being and my real vision and purpose for the next 25 years of my life.
Yep.
If I'm so lucky to have 25 more years.
Yep.
And I really wanted to be thinking that way. And I found myself, this is the person that I am. I'm okay with pausing.
That's it.
And pausing to think and to sit and be with a question for a while. Because if it's triggering enough for me to, it's important enough and it's triggering enough that I'm like, I don't feel good about this anymore, then I'm okay to stop there. And so I'm returning to this program, but I just wanted to note and share this as kind of a deeper reflection from the last few months, is that there's been this big pause within myself to deeply reflect on how do I really want to answer that question before I just go ahead and throw one out there that is whatever of an answer. I want to answer it with authenticity, and I want to answer it with what really, really feels true and meaningful and valuable to myself. And sometimes that takes a long time to come to clarity about.
Absolutely.
It might take years, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is, I think, part of the nuanced nature of growing and learning is that sometimes we have to pivot, just like we, do in these conversations. It sounds so silly, but I think it's not a double-edged sword, but it's a balance, right? I think I just literally just posted about this morning, was that about
dichotomy.
Yeah, like the medicine being always different, in that sometimes it is taking things off of our plate to rest more or whatever, and sometimes it is leaning into the discomfort of following through. It's not always easy to discern which one is for us, but what I hear in your share is that you are making a decision that is one or the other for yourself, and you're not sitting on the sidelines of your experience. You're going, I think what I need now, what I'm feeling and thinking and imagining is right for me right now, based on, again, not having clarity, is to step back and really take some time with this question. That's good.
Yeah. And the other piece of it is, trying to come, because I deeply want to have a authentic answer within myself, something that I'm not going to, get excited about it and lose interest in a little while.
Exactly.
It really needs to be something. And so why I'm bringing this up is, in this reflection of like, what's the decision that I make? What's the greater, there's so many people, all of us, everybody has to make decisions in their life about what direction that they're going in and what the big choices are and why. And I'm recognizing, and I want to encourage others to use this example to kind of dig into their own journey. The thing that I'm most scared of, I'm recognizing the one that feels terrifying and going, oh, yeah, that seems like a really, really scary idea. I should probably do that.
I know, the worst. The worst.
It's the worst. I'm like, oh no.
Oh my God.
I'm super scared. I'm gonna have to do that one.
It's so funny. The last year, for those that have listened to past episodes about our sharing about our plant medicine healing work and ayahuasca ceremonies and whatnot, I got the message last year to integrate, like that I was good. I had sat with the medicine a number of times last year, and she told me to, you're good. You're good. Go force and integrate and live, right? Like, no need to sit with the medicine for a while. And so I haven't. I mean, I've had some experiences this year with mushrooms in a more ceremonial sense, and I've done some more microdosing this year and whatnot to experience how that's affects me and aids me if it does. But ayahuasca specifically, I have not sat with her at all this year by direction, by design, by sensing the need to be with her or not. Anyway, long story short, I did just book my next 3-day for next February, and it's right. It's time. It feels right. And to sort of round out this sharing today, I'm happy to be on the other side of this giant thing that I worked a lot to make happen, this talk, this move. But it's more than that. Like, this stuff is happening all because of the healing work that I've done. These things, these small they're not small things, but they're small in the grand scheme, but they also are only occurring because of all of the effort that I've put in up to this point to heal and change and grow, and become this person that I am today. That is not the person who was here a year ago. That is not the person at all that was here 5 years ago when we started this whole podcast thing. Which, by the way, I just can't not give us credit, Jay. Speaking of maintained motivation, willingness to follow through, willingness to be on the journey together, I'm really so grateful because I know what we're doing is helping people, and I'm so happy that it is, and it absolutely is helping me. So I love you, and I'm so thankful, and I'm excited to enjoy the holidays, and that's it.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, I'm super excited that you've signed up for another journey.
Yeah.
And I am about 3 weeks out from my next one.
Nice.
So I'm also very looking forward to sinking into that because I have very clear intentions.
Yeah.
And that's a really powerful feeling inside. It's like, okay, I know what I'm going there to work on. I know what things I want to address. And that feels really good to know, I'm going to go work on this part of myself. So
I love that. Oh, I just feel so good to talk to you. Oh my God. I almost feel out of practice because it's been so long. Like, even though we've done other interview episodes, which have been amazing, by the way. I love that we're having guests on now, but it is like just so great to just sit here and talk to you.
It's a pleasure. I love talking to you too. Oh, shall we wrap this up?
Let's wrap it.
All right. So, audience, listeners, if you've made it this far into the show, I bet you've received some value from this podcast. And we would love it if you would support us by subscribing on any of our channels, YouTube, Spotify, follow on Instagram, a 5-star review on Apple if you think we deserve it, and comment, like, share, all the stuff. It's, every single channel says the same thing, but the reality is if we don't have those, the show doesn't grow and it gets harder and harder to produce. And the support that we receive from you is absolutely, absolutely critical. And thank you for doing so.
Yeah, thank you everyone so much for listening. We know it takes time, energy, heart to spend an hour plus listening to us, listening to people that we are thinking will add value. It matters, and it means something to us that you spend your time with us. And for real, like, if you really do want to join the Trust the Journey family for support and you want to get to know us more personally, join the Trust the Journey family. Like, you are welcome. You absolutely are welcome. Our Patreon supporters, the people who do financially support us, really make this show possible. Like, this is still very much from our hearts. It's a passion project, and we welcome any of those donations at any level. So thank you all for those that do that. But if you need to support the show by doing the cost-free options, that's also great. But any questions you have, reach out to us, drop us a DM on Instagram, trustthejourney.today. And we love you so much.
Yeah. Keep laughing, keep loving, and keep trusting the journey.